Alright, this is our last recording for the Algebra Semester 1 review, numbers 71 through 86. Alright, number 71, David is ordering tea from an online store. Black tea costs 80 cents per ounce, and green tea costs $1.20 per ounce. He plans to spend a total of $12 on the two types of tea. The graph shows all possible combinations of orders David can place. What does the point 8, 4 represent? Well, notice the 8 is in our x-axis. And our x-axis represents black tea. So what that means is that he got 8 ounces of black tea and then the 4 is in the y, and our y-axis is the ounces of green tea. So that means that he got 4 ounces of green tea. And that's all that ordered pair means. 8 ounces of black tea and 4 ounces of green tea. Number 72, it says, the lines graphed above are perpendicular. What is the slope of line P? Well, we first need to find the slope of line Q. And whenever we do that, we see that we take the point on the left and we go up 2, 1, 2, and then over 1, 2, 3, over 3. So our slope for line Q is up 2 over 3 is 2/3. So we know that perpendicular means that they are opposite reciprocals. So I'm going to change this to its opposite, which is negative. Reciprocal means to flip that fraction, so that's 3 over 2. So our answer here is B, negative 3 over 2. Number 73. What is the slope of a line perpendicular to y equals negative 2x plus 9? Well, let's look at our slope here. It's negative 2. Perpendicular means opposite reciprocal. Very important for you to know. Opposite reciprocal. So we're going to take that negative 2 and do the opposite reciprocal. So instead of negative, it's going to be positive. Reciprocal means to flip it. And remember, we can change that to a fraction. And if we flip it, that would be 1/2. So there's our answer, 1/2. 74. What is the equation of the line parallel to y equals 4/3 x minus 9 that goes through the point 3, negative 4? Okay, well, parallel means that they have same slope. Same slope. So if we look at the slope here, we see that we have a slope of 4/3. So we want to have the slope of 4/3, and we want to have the point of 3, negative 4. So that means we've got a point, we've got a slope. We need to put this in point slope form, which is y minus y1, or y sub 1, equals m times x minus x sub 1. So let's go ahead and plug that in. That's going to be y plus 4 equals 4/3 x minus 3. We distribute here. That gives us y plus 4 equals 4/3 x minus, and that's going to be negative 3 times 4 divided by 3, which will give us a negative 4. If we subtract 4 from both sides, notice we get y equals 4/3 x minus 8. But now, if we're looking at all the choices, they're not in slope-intercept form. They're in standard form. So remember, standard form does not have any fractions. So I need to get rid of this fraction. To get rid of the fraction, I need to multiply everything by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So that gives us 3y equals 3 times 4 divided by 3 gives us, that's going to give us 4x minus 24. And then if we bring the x in front, we would subtract the 4x. Those cancel out. That gives us negative 4x plus 3y equals negative 24. But remember, in standard form, the x cannot be negative. So we need to divide everything or multiply everything by negative 1. And so that would take us to 4x minus 3y equals a positive 24. So our answer here is D. All right, looking at number 75. Determine the equation of the line perpendicular to and passing through the same x-intercept as shown. So the x-intercept shown here is negative 4, 0. Now we need to figure out what the slope is here. The slope is here, well, I'm just going to take 2 points. I'm going to take this point and this point here. And I see that it goes up 1 and over 2. So our slope here is 1 over 2. But we need it perpendicular, so that means I need to change it to the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite reciprocal of that needs to be negative. Flip it, that's going to be 2 over 1, which is the same thing as saying negative 2. So I've got my slope of negative 2 and I've got my point. Point and a slope, point-slope form. So that's going to be y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So that gives me y minus 0 equals negative 2 times x, and this one is going to be a plus 4. So y minus 0, that just gives us y. And then distribute here, that gives us negative 2x minus 8. And there's our equation of the line. Alright, number 76. Awesome Autos Cars Detail charges $30 for a full service detail on cars and $45 for a full service detail on SUVs. The equation 30x plus 45y equals 450 represents the amount that must be earned each hour to cover the expense, where x represents cars and y represents SUVs. Determine the x and y intercepts of this equation and state what each one means in terms of the business. Well, remember, the x and the y intercepts. The x is when y is 0, and then the y-intercept is when x is 0. So our equation is 30x plus 45y equals 450. So to find the x-intercept, remember, we cover up the y. So if I cover up the y, that leaves us with 30x equals 450. Divide by 30, and x is equal to 15. So our x-intercept here is 15, 0. And that means that they must wash 15 cars and 0 SUVs to earn $450. Okay, and now let's look at the next one, the y-intercept. So remember, our equation was 30x plus 45y equals 450. So to find the y-intercept, we cover up the x, so that's gone, and that leaves us with 45y equals 450. Divide by 45 on both sides, and y is equal to 10. So our y-intercept here is 0, 10. So what this means is you would wash or detail 0 cars and 10 SUVs to earn $450. All right, number 77, match each equation with the graph. Okay, so please understand this is not multiple choice. We are matching here. So right here, let's first determine the first two inequalities. So actually, these aren't equations, they're inequalities. So we've got a y-intercept of -1. So the only two that I have with a -1 is C and B. Because the other y-intercepts are +4. Alright, so notice here that the first equation has less than. So that means the shading was done below the line. And that is graph B. Number 1, the shading is below. On graph C, the shading is above, so that's going to be the greater than, which is 2. Alright, now looking at 3 and 4. Alright, we know that that's going to be between A and D. Notice the A is the shading is above the line, so that's equation 4 has the greater than sign. And then equation 3 has the less than sign, and notice that our shading is done below. So that would be the inequality 3. 78. For each graph shown below, tell the solution. Well, remember the solution is where they intersect. So right here, that intersection is 0, -1. Right here, the intersection is 2, 1. On graph C, notice that they are parallel. They will never intersect, so that would be no solution. And graph D right here, that is -1, -1. '79. Match the solution type to the system of equations. If you've got parallel lines, remember you will have no solution. So that would be 3. Perpendicular lines means that they intersect. And if they intersect, you will have one solution. And if it's the same exact line, that one line is on top of the other, and that means you will have infinite solutions. Number 80. Identify each system. Okay, well, notice here, looking at our slopes, we've got 4, we've got a -1/4. That means that they are perpendicular. Perpendicular, once again, means that you will have one solution. One solution is constant and independent. All right, looking at B here, notice they're not in slope-intercept form. The first one is, but the second one is not. So let's go ahead and put it in slope-intercept form by dividing each term by 3. And whenever we do that, we get y equals 2x plus 10. And notice we've got the same equation. Well, if they're the same exact equation, it's consistent and dependent. All right, solve the system of equations here. So notice right here, they're in standard form. The best method would be elimination. So I see that I already have opposites in the y, so I'm going to eliminate those. Those cancel out. That gives me 5x equals 41 and a -16. That gives me 25. Divide by 5. And x equals 5. So now to find the y value, we plug that in. And you can plug it into either equation. So 4 times 5 plus 7y equals 41. That gives us 20 plus 7y equals 41. Subtract by 20, or subtract 20 on both sides. That gives me 7y equals 21. Divide by 7. And y equals 3. So our ordered pair here is 5, 3. All right, number 82, we're solving the system. Now remember, if you forget how to solve these, you can always take each ordered pair and plug it into the x and to the y, and it needs to be able to have a true statement for both equations, not just one, but both. But for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the elimination method again. And I'm going to eliminate the y's because I see looking at this first equation, not everything is lined up. Let's go ahead and get this lined up. So that gives us negative 5x plus 3y equals negative 47. So what I did there was I did the commutative property and I moved the x and the y, so now that I've got it in standard form. So everything's going to be lined up. So instead of eliminating the y's, I'm going to eliminate the x's. So that means I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by 5. Remember, you multiply everything on that bottom equation by 5. So that gives us 5x plus 5y equals 55. Okay, we are adding here. Those will cancel out. That gives us 8y equals 8. Divide by 8. And y equals 1. Now take that and plug it into either equation. I'm going to plug it into the original bottom equation. So it's going to be x plus 1 equals 11. Subtract 1 on both sides. And that gives us x equals 10. So our ordered pair for this one, or our solution, is 10, 1. So that means our answer here is C. 83. At Yankee Candle, 4 candles and 3 votives sell for $34. So we've got 2 candles and 1 votive that costs, and the cost is $16. Choose a system of equations. So right now there's nothing that we need to solve. All we need to do is just find the equations to work out for this. Okay, so we've got 4 candles. So we're going to use 4C. And then 3 votives, so that's going to be plus 3V. And they sell for $34. Okay, and then our other equation, we've got 2 candles, so it's going to be 2C, and 1 votive, so that all we need to do is just put a V, and the cost is 16. So now we just need to match which one that is, and it looks like that would be choice D. Alright, so then in 84 it says, in the previous problem, what is the cost of 1 candle? So what that means is we now need to solve. So since we are looking for the cost of 1 candle, the best thing to eliminate would be the V's, because we're looking for the C. Okay, we're looking for a candle, so that means we want to eliminate the V's. To eliminate those, we want them to be opposites. So we've got a 3V, so that means we want the other one to be a negative 3V, so we need to multiply by negative 3. So that gives me negative 6C minus 3V equals negative 48. I'm just going to copy the other equation right below it. Those are going to cancel out. That gives us negative 2C equals negative 14. Divide by negative 2, and we know that C equals 7. And notice here, if you got a negative answer, you've done something wrong, because a candle is not going to cost a negative amount. So if you have a word problem and you're solving it and you get a negative answer for a cost, go back and check to see what you've done, because some sort of mistake happened somewhere. All right, number 85, identify the correct graph for the solution. All right, so first we need to figure out which line goes with each inequality. So right here, I'm looking at this one, it's got a +3, so we know that, and it's got a -3 slope, so we should know that this would be the line for each one of those. Okay, the one that's got a negative slope, and then the y-intercept of a +3. All right, now I'm going to look at that inequality sign, and our inequality sign says that it's greater than or equal to. So greater than means the shading should be done above it. So I see it's done above here, it's done above here, but notice on C and D it's done below. So C and D are out. So now let's take a look at the other inequality. So we know the other inequality would be this line here. It's got a positive slope and it has a 1 of a y-intercept. So let's look at that inequality, and it says for this one, the shading needs to be done below that line. So notice here the shading is not done below, but over here it has, so that means our solution is B. All right, number 86, last problem from our semester review. So it says place the inequality symbols into the system that matches the graph. So first thing we see, I've got a -3 y-intercept. So that's going to be this one right here. Notice that has a dotted line and the shading is done below. So that inequality is going to be less than. The shading is below, it's dotted, so it's not going to be less than or equal to. It's just going to be less than. All right, now let's look at the other line. Notice at the other line, we've got a y-intercept of 1 and a -2 slope. So that would be this line here. And notice the shading is done above. So that's going to be greater than. Because it's a solid line, it's going to be greater than or equal to. So those are your inequality signs that you would use for 86. All right, that's the end of our semester 1 review. Remember, if you have any questions, please let me know.